I want to thank everybody for joining me today for this session. There's been so many great sessions so far at DrupalCon, and I really appreciate you taking the time out with all the other great content that's available to come spend a little bit of time with me and let me share with you some thoughts that I have around the idea of unifying the customer experience across the enterprise. With what's happening in the world today, with COVID and all the other things that are going on in the world, it's really, we're certainly seeing, and I'm sure all of you are seeing, and maybe it's even the reason why you're here at DrupalCon, the impact that digital is having on business today, and how critical it is, even more critical than people had put weight on in the past. And so, we're seeing, I'm seeing in my experience in my company, just this incredible hunger for people to accelerate and take digital to the next level. And I hope that what I'm going to share with you today is going to help you get a little bit better handle on how we've seen and ways that we've seen people, progress their digital environments, their digital platforms, and their digital engagements with their customers, providing that great experience that we need to connect our brands with our customers and our customers with our brand. So I want to start by touching on the word unify and really, kind of break down into what does the word unify really mean, and what, how do I apply it to this conversation. So, the definition of the word unify is to make or become united, uniform, or whole. And I'm not really going to touch on the word uniform, because uniform is kind of tough in this scenario, but united and whole is really the key elements to this conversation. And the idea is we live in in a time where we're trying to make better connections with our customers, and our marketing efforts, marketing stack, and our organizations as a whole are in kind of lots of different components and different places and touch points with our customers. And the idea here is, how do we bring those things together, bring our stack together, to create great personalized customer experiences. And so for us, this is really about uniting the marketing org and all the departments that touch the customer through technology, and kind of making a more holistic engagement with the customer. And we can see why that's been such a challenge when we kind of look out at this ever expanding marketing technology landscape. This year, Scott Brinker, Chief Martech, released this annual landscape of marketing technology that he often does every year. It was called the Martech 5000, but now it's the Martech 8000, and you can see how complex over time. It's gone from in 2014 to 947 solutions to now in 2020 8,000 technology solutions. And the challenge that this creates is that there's so much to choose from that it becomes really hard for marketers to even know what to do, and in all the good effort, there's lots of confusion. And when we look back and we think about the complexity of people's buying experiences, like if we think back to the 90s, right? Back in the 90s, you walked into the average grocery store, there were about 7,000 products in the grocery store back then. Today, your choices can be as high as 50,000 or more products inside the grocery store for you to choose from. And that choice, although it makes it feel like you have at your fingertips more things that you could need or want, it's kind of in that choice that the challenge becomes more compounded. And Barry Schwartz wrote a book called The Paradox of Choice, and in that he outlines a couple of things that happen with all this abundance of choice. And these four things kind of roll out this way. Analysis paralysis kind of sets in. It's easier to pick 1 out of 2 meals than it is to pick 1 out of 50 meals, right? So when there's so much availability in the marketing technology landscape, and not even just talking about as a whole 8,000 products, but even in specific product categories, there can be so many things to choose from. It makes it really difficult to make those choices. Then on top of that is anticipated regret, right? You're getting ready to make a choice, and you say to yourself, "Oh boy, I hope I don't make the wrong choice," and you struggle through that. And then there's post-decision regret. I've made the choice, and I hope I didn't make the wrong choice. And then lastly, we talk about, Barry talks in that book about escalated expectations. When you have so much choice, you think to yourself, oh, I probably can pick the best thing for me or for my need out of a broader choice of things. But the reality is, in all that confusion, it makes it really hard to determine whether you've actually selected perfect or what perfect even really is. And so from there, it takes commitment. And when we look at marketing organizations and companies as a whole, even trying to figure out how to move forward the customer experience through digital, we kind of have to look at it from a particular vantage point. And what we often see in my company is people kind of move through these progressions of thought and think that that's the way towards maturity, right? And they kind of get this heroic, like, hey, we're going to go out, we're gonna make this transformation in our organization. We're going to go out and we're going to buy best-in-class platforms, and then we're going to understand the customer shape and be experience-driven, and then get speed and scale as a company. And it's really kind of important to actually look at this from the opposite direction and think about the experience, the customer first. Speed and scale is part of that, and let that inform your technology decisions. And so from that, we like to look at the idea of like understanding where you are, current state, and where you're trying to go, and build a plan and a roadmap. And I'm going to talk a little bit more in detail about how you do that in the coming half an hour or so. So most importantly, when we think about these things, we have to start with goals. And what we see as a consultancy and a service organization is most marketers are so excited to try and be effective in their organization, they run out and buy a piece of technology or stand up a piece of technology from that 8,000, trying to find the perfect thing that's going to solve the current problem. And it's hard to do that effectively without identifying some goals and objectives. And we see, if you take this kind of progressive approach of first identifying your business goals and then objectives that are associated with those business goals, allowing that to inform marketing goals and create some objectives that associate with those marketing goals, and then let that inform technology goals, not the other way around, right? Don't go buy a product and say, like, how can we make this work for us? But ask yourself what you want to do, and then apply that. And then I think, although we're pretty far down the marketing technology acquisition road, most of you that are on this session right now, it's really the same application holds true for the stuff that you have in your stack currently, right? Throwing stuff up against the wall and hoping it works isn't really the best approach. It's much more, hey, what are we really trying to accomplish with this? And I'm going to break down how you do that. So again, we have to look at goals as the things that we're trying to achieve or what our desired result is, and then our objectives, which are specifically measurable actions that we use to achieve those goals. And for us, when we think about creating unifying customer experiences across the enterprise, it really breaks down from there, those goals and objectives, into 4 categories. And those are overarching the customer experience, as we discussed, content, data, and marketing technology. And we very often, when we are talking to people around marketing and marketing technology, they almost don't know which way to run. And maybe that's, I'm even under exaggerating there, there's so many things that marketers and marketing organizations feel like they need to do that it's hard to pin that down. And for us, we look at everything kind of fits inside of these 4 areas. And if you can break these 4 areas down in a manageable components, and as I said, building a plan across time, you can move towards that direction. So let me dig in a little bit more around customer experience, content, data, and then technology, marketing technology specifically. So when we talk about customer experience, it's important to think about the customer first. It's all about your interactions with that customer and that customer's interaction with your brand. And I often think back when I'm thinking about how do we help people leverage and move digital in a direction that's meaningful, impactful for their business. I think way back to when there wasn't digital in the world, and maybe somewhere in the United States or elsewhere there was a person that lived far outside of a town, but their local grocer probably knew who they were, right? And that grocer would, based on their relationship, would make purchases or bring things into their store, knowing their customers from interactions that they had, gathering data over lots of experiences, and then providing that experience back to that customer when they show up in their store. So next time that customer walks in, a product that they may have heard that customer talk about is there and available for them. And that's that connection that made those relationships so powerful back then. And we're trying to create that through digital today. So it's in those interactions, and it's knowing that customer, knowing that target audience intimately, that's critical to that. And so how do we do that? So let's talk a little bit about the customer here and talk about, give me a second here. The first most important thing when I was talking about that interaction with that customer in that general store is who are they? In those interactions in those marketplaces, people even knew those people by name, right? They would say, "Hey, Peter, glad you could come into my store today. Hey, we talked last week. You really like this product. I brought it in because I knew you'd want it," right? So it's knowing who your target audience is, and then knowing what they want from your brand. Just like I said, is having an understanding and knowing what the customer might want, and then knowing your why. Like, why are you there, and what are you expecting from that transaction as a brand? How do you make that connection? It's the who, what, and the why of the relationship that you have with the customer. That's first, and it takes time to break that down in a digital scenario. Pulling that data together, and we're going to talk about that later in a few minutes as we proceed forward. But it's really the who, the what, and the why of the relationship that are critical for you to then be able to translate that into customer experience. And when we look at customer experience, we look how that applies to your organization or to you as a marketer. And we have to think about these things, right? These 5 things that are critical. And again, as I'm going through this presentation, this is really a progressive thing. If we think about our business goals, our marketing goals, our technology goals, and we think about customer experience and the who, the what, and the why, and then apply that to these 5 elements, it starts to bring together the components that are necessary for us to have a better understanding about what customer experience is. So creating a customer-centric culture inside of your organization, your employees, your team members all need to be thinking about and understanding what CX is, or what customer experience is, and how they can be involved. That requires training and sharing and engaging the internal team on kind of a mission of delivering great experience. And then it's aligning those business goals we were talking about before with your culture, right? So the culture, owns those goals to deliver those business goals in and around that who, what, and why of the customer. So it's about adoption. It's about, as I said, getting it in and embedded inside of that. Then it's getting feedback, right, and gathering insight. And sometimes that's passive, right? Sometimes that's, hey, we're gonna look and crunch some data and try and understand better based off of behavior what we can glean from that. And there's some interesting work being done, that has been done there and is being done in those areas. And I think we're all kind of pushing forward in that. But then there's also straight up feedback from your customers, getting the voice of the customer from them, hearing them, just like I was talking about walking into my local grocer before digital, and understanding kind of all of those connection points with your customer. And then based off of that, creating experience design, right? So we're talking about lots of information, lots of understanding before we get to the point of engagement with the customer, kind of putting connectivity out in front with that customer. So we talk about, building journey mapping to drive, improvement and helping create connectedness with your customer through your people, your process, your technology, and kind of from that thought process of designing for customer interaction, customer experience. And then, as with anything, measuring things is the most important. I think there's certainly a yearning inside the marketing organization for elevating the quantifiable nature of marketing. How do we measure our customers' experience with us? And so building measurement around that. And so when you think about, as you progress forward in customer experience, you have to look at each of these individual elements that we're talking about here, point them back to the what, the who, what, and why, point back to the business goals, right? You're always going to hear me keep kind of talking back to this principle-centered approach towards always tying things back to business, marketing, technology goals through these different lenses. But you should be able to see and categorize efforts that you're making. And are we making improvements to customer-centric culture? Are we making improvements to experience design, insights and understanding, adoption, accountability? Are we able to better measure? From there, I want to talk a little bit about content. So content has been, content is king, has been said a million times throughout all of our experiences in and around marketing. But there are things that you need to do for, again, we just don't throw stuff up against the wall, right? That local grocer listened to me, and then he provided back to me something meaningful for my experience with him. And so for us, content, is beyond content. It's about creating content experiences. And that starts with a strategy, right? So we talked about what the components are of a customer experience strategy or CX strategy. Here we're talking about creating content strategy. And then as with all of these areas, auditing your current stance, right? Because we have to start where we are and design where we want to go. We're creating a strategy and auditing our current space and identifying where we are. Content experience looks at the environment and in which we serve content and the way we organize it and all of the different things. Customers are not looking for just a particular thing. They're looking for the answer to the question or the problem that they have right at this moment. They're trying to find resources that can help them move purposefully forward in their buying decision. And the more we can understand strategically what they're looking for and align our strategy with that, the better we can be. So we create a strategy to give them the messaging that's important based on, right, the what, the why, the who of the customer. Create a strategy, and then go through content creation to fill those gaps. So if you were to look at my company's content strategy, right, we have some very concrete areas that we are creating content into to make sure that we're answering questions of customers in their individual places where they might be interested in gaining information about what we do, and we don't just write stuff and throw it up against the wall and hope it sticks. And then content management, and a lot of what what DrupalCon has been about is in and around the concept of content management and engagement with the customer. But it's more than that. We understand workflows and how we distribute that through channels. Some really exciting stuff, that's happening in this space, and how Drupal can support that. I'm not going to bore you with that because there are people that are smarter than me about all of the idiosyncrasies of how Drupal can help with this. But content management and a strategy around content management is super important to success there as well. And when we look at all of these things, that your strategy, your content strategy should have all of these things. What's our content creation strategy? What's our content management strategy? What's our content distribution and amplification strategy? So when we create a new piece of content and we're managing that piece of content and we push that content out into the marketplace, how are we distributing that and how are we amplifying it so that the customer who needs that piece of content at the particular place in their journey is getting that piece of content? That's an important component of your strategy as well. And then lastly, as you're going to keep hearing here, is the content performance analysis. How well is a piece of content tying back to providing the customer what they need at that moment? How is it helping us better engage with customers at different times in their journey? So again, these are not just dots on a screen for you to look at. From our, my viewpoint and our viewpoint at my company, your content strategy should contain strategies in each of these areas. How do we measure content's performance? Creating documented understanding about what content performance means for your organization, so that you can better organize and execute on that journey and delivering the right information to the customer at the right time. Next, I want to talk about data. So this image is the image of the Apollo computer that launched the Apollo spacecraft into space. And I'm only sharing this to kind of illustrate the progression of data and the progression of power, computing power as we go on here. But in 1998, Texas Instruments released a calculator, the TI-73, or computer TI-73, and then in 2004 they released the TI-84, right? That added a processing power 140 times faster than the Apollo computer the TI-73 did, and the TI-84 was 350 times faster than the Apollo computer. When we look at today's iPhone, the iPhone is 100,000 times the processing power of that computer, just in the iPhone in our hands. And so when we think about things like crunching and managing data in a way that we can meaningfully use it, it requires strategy. It requires bringing that information together in a way that we can unify a customer view. And I'm not necessarily talking about single view of the customer, but I'm talking about bringing, at any given time in the customer's engagement, being able to bring that data together in a way that you can meaningfully make a decision or gain a critical insight, to be able to respond to that customer, right? And so when we look at these things, there's computing power, there's data storage technology as we move forward that can bring information together in a way that we can make meaningful decisions and meaningful engagements with the customer in their journey with us. And there's a really interesting example of this. Starbucks is using data to provide information about ordering drinks and seasonal trends and things of that nature. They're based off of their own app. They understand what the busiest hours of their day are and what their most ordered drinks are, and what their seasonal trends are, customer habits, preferences, and more. And they're using this information to build campaigns and promotions to help them leverage that data to engage the customer in a better, more positive way. And I think another, silly anecdote to add to this was, Walmart is also doing this, and I understand Starbucks and Walmart, big companies, I get that, but the concepts and the ideas are still applicable. But Walmart found a trend that when there's a pending hurricane in an area, strawberry Pop-Tart sales go up 700%. And so Walmart's able to make it, just like that grocer who kind of knew what I wanted when I went into the grocery store. Walmart's able to bring strawberry Pop-Tarts and beer. Actually, was the other item that was really a big seller. But they're able to, bring 7 times the Pop-Tarts to the location that's going to be affected by the hurricane to satisfy what the customer's wants and needs are. And it's pretty important to, for us to be able to be moving in that direction. So creating strategies around bringing data together at a moment to be able to make a good decision about how we engage the customer, at that point in their experience. And then lastly, I want to talk about marketing technology. So, and how this all comes together. And again, remember, talking about customer experience, content, data, and marketing technology together. So when we think about making technology, marketing technology work, it's important to think first about organizational fit, right? And when we look at a product like Drupal, it's very fitting for, certainly I see a lot of different organization types attending DrupalCon and have over the years seen it fit in many different instances. But there are times when different products aren't the right fit, right? We don't want to use a hammer where a screw is needed. We don't want to, get a giant 18-wheel dump truck when a pickup truck is more appropriate. So we have to see and understand what the actual need is, what the capacity is, what those critical elements are, and how we engage with the customer in different places to determine whether that piece of technology is a good fit. When we talk about appropriate technology, it's, again, this is actually probably more appropriate for me talking about the hammer versus the screwdriver, right? We don't want to be, sending out mass emails through our content management system, right? We want to use the right tools for the right job. So when we're selecting things, they have to be the right tool for the right job. It has to be usable design. Again, when we think back about the 8,000 different solutions that are available, bigger doesn't always mean better, and it's finding the better, more fitting technology for your organization. That's kind of what is at the key of being successful in making your technology deliver what you need it to with regards to customer experience. And then lastly, we talk about it being manageable and supportable. Inside of your organization, if you have an organization that has a small agile IT staff and marketing staff, larger enterprise platforms might not be the right fit for you, and vice versa, right? So understanding what your organization is capable of managing and leveraging that is, or at least aligning to that is key, right? And so when we think about marketing technology as a whole, if we were to go back to that original landscape or that Scott Brinker put out, I think there's 13 or 14, maybe even 15 categories of product. But we like to talk about kind of the 5 core areas of marketing technology that, we can buy lots of different technology, but if we're not kind of getting our customer view across these 5 things, then we're probably missing opportunities. And for us, that boils down to the following 5 areas. Marketing automation. And in marketing automation, I would think about any piece of technology that you might use for outbound when we talk about let's say content broadcasting or raising awareness about a piece of content or being able to connect with a customer. It doesn't just include marketing automation in the traditional sense of some type of email campaign management tool. I would look at any tool that you would use for outbound messaging, like ad tech or social tech, traditional marketing automation, kind of fit in this category for me. And then content management. So products like Drupal that are really good at creating and managing content. I would throw dams in here as well. Anything that kind of houses content and that we use as a way to leverage and push that content out to, through, distribution. Customer data. And this would be everything from CRMs to CDPs or, platforms that centralize data or manage data, help you manage data. Analytics tools that kind of dig in and tie into all of these things. Tools like GA or business intelligence tools or predictive analytics tools, AI tools, those types of things fit in this analytics space. And then lastly, e-com. So for us, when we are talking to somebody about how do they move the customer experience forward, we go into organizations and we see marketing technology stacks that have, an average of upwards of 30 products in their marketing technology stack, but we tend to lean into these 5 areas and think, how can we make these multiply their effectiveness rather than getting distracted with lots of different tools in and outside of these categories of tools. These are the areas where we really hone in and say, when we can make marketing automation tools, content management tools, customer data tools, analytics tools, and e-com tools. And I want to talk about e-com tools just really quickly, because I know there's a whole bunch of higher ed people that have been in and floating around and are, users of Drupal that we would look at learning management systems or those types of any type of transactional tool. I would fit into that e-com bucket as well. So think about it in terms of any type of way in which you execute a transaction with a customer would fit in that e-com bucket. But for us, we really focus in on these 5 areas and how can we make these 5 areas understand our customer engagement and journey, and then how can we make them see the customer in a similar or the same way at given different points of their journey, so that when a customer engages with content, that we can somehow raise what that interaction was up to people who are responsible in marketing automation, so that they can make better decisions, have better insight about what that customer engagement looks like, and provide more appropriate messaging or communication to that customer, and so on across this these 5 pillars of marketing technology, so to speak. So this is where we kind of focus in. You can get distracted with the 15 or whatever categories that there are in lots of different 8,000 products out there, but we kind of find if we can hone in on these, we can start to help move the needle and build better customer experience for marketing organizations. And with that comes one more thing, and that's thinking about the way we work together. So inside of your organization, you might have different departments that are in and involved in touching in the customer, and that's both in supporting roles as well as direct roles. So sales and marketing, IT, customer support, there's all kinds of different touch points of the customer in that journey. And we tend not only to see data stuck in silos, but we see personnel stuck in silos, and sometimes even inside of departments. Like I was just talking, we see organizations that have content teams and marketing automation teams and e-com teams, and very often they're sitting in siloed spaces, and frankly, the data tends to be a symptom of that challenge, not the cause of that challenge. And so I think it's important for as you're looking at this, is saying, how do we get everybody working together, thinking about the customer experience? And this is where we go back to that adoption and commitment to customer experience as an overarching theme in your organization. Thinking about how do you break down the silos, and sometimes that's we've I found most effectively that happens kind of one improvement to customer experience across departments and groups at a time. Like, hey, we want to make this one change that's going to improve this one component of our engagement with our customer, and you get working together and you start to see the value of that and break those silos down, bring the data together, bring the customer connection together. And so this last graphic that I have here kind of summarizes for me and us at my company what we see as the core of all of what I've just explained. It's these unifying strategies, and the word unifying strategies kind of in that white band over top of the orange areas of customer experience, content, data, and MarTech. Understand that each of those areas, many of you probably have some of those strategies developed in your organization, but the challenge is how do you create a strategy that unifies across them so that when you're making decisions about content, it's informed strategically and then tactically by things that have been decided about how you handle or manage data, or how you approach marketing technology strategy, CX strategy. And from that unifying strategy that pushes out and helps us make decisions about what we do with marketing automation, content management, customer data, analytics, and e-commerce, and then allow that to affect the ways that we work. And I was originally supposed to do this presentation at a live Drupal event, which we all know has turned into a virtual Drupal event. And as a result, there was a live demo that we do that supports a little bit of what the result is of this, and it's called Grandeur. And I just want to offer to anybody, if you'd like to see that presentation, we're happy to share that with you. Just feel free to reach out to us at either of these things, and we're happy to set up. If we find that there's a lot of people that would like to see it, we'll set up some, group share or something like that. But the idea of this demo kind of shows across marketing automation, analytics, content, and customer data, what a unified customer experience engagement might look like. And this is a live demo. This is not some presentation. People would interact, and we would see, live interaction and live data. It's pretty interesting, and helps people see the benefit of being able to provide to different people inside of the organization the right information at the right time in the customer journey so that you can properly engage them. That is the end of my presentation for today. Wanted to thank all of you for coming, and I'm happy to stay here for a few minutes. If anybody has any questions, you can feel free to pop them in the chat, and I'm happy to share. Sure. So the question was asked about what we see the marketing automation meaning. So think about it in terms of anything that could send a proactive message out or connection out to the customer. So traditional marketing automation, email campaigning tools, social tech. So any kind of technology that you might use to leverage sending out social messaging, ad tech, that might send out, send advertising out, be used to, raise awareness about content that you might have, or, connect you with your customers. So kind of think about any kind of tool that you might have. I mean, there's, text messaging, automation tool that you would say, hey, when a customer comes to us and they're in this place in the journey, or we get this piece of content that we might want to push out, we can use this tool. And sometimes that's more general in nature. Hey, we're sending emails, or we're broadcasting a new ad out to social about this piece of content that we we just released, but it could be really strategic in nature, where you have a known group of customers who have a certain persona or profile or proclivity to a particular bit of information, and you can share that with them in a meaningful way. Like if sometimes through let's say LinkedIn relationships or Twitter relationships, or existing customers through email, you can say, hey, you've shown me that you have this preference to this bit of information. Let me share that particular bit of information with you. So it's those tools that you would use to send messaging out, whether that be more broadly general or to specific people based on their preferences, whether those be implicit or explicit. No problem at all. My pleasure. Well, just again want to thank everybody for their time today, and if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer them in whatever way that you can. Feel free to reach out to me. I'm sure there's a way to reach out to me through chatting, throughout the existence of DrupalCon. I'm happy to answer any questions there. Jump on a chat with somebody. Feel free to reach out to me in whatever way you feel like you would be most helpful for you. And once again, thank you for your time.